So now, I'm going to introduce our veggie lady from Casper, Wyoming, LeAnn Miller. She's been involved in promoting local food for a really long time. She'll tell you her story. I don't need to repeat that. She's been a driving force from local food activities in Casper, but not just in Casper, statewide. And she has her own gardening and marketing business. I've been told that you really should go to the farmer's market when LeAnn is there, because she knows how to make you buy something. She's a great marketer. I'm going to just leave it at that and let LeAnn tell you her story.
Thank you. Okay, I'm a really big loudmouth, and which is probably why my booth does so well, because they can hear me to the next door or to the next block over. If you can't hear me, I'll use the microphone, but I'm pretty loud, so please let me know though if you want me to use the microphone. So I'll give you a little bit of background about me, per se. I grew up on a farm, on a dairy farm actually, in Minnesota. You can throw a seed there and it grows. We had, since it was a dairy farm, we had lots and lots of cows. We were part of a co-op. The big silver semi-truck came and filled up 2 or 3 times a week. We had thousands of chickens, and so it was a very large dairy farm. That's when I was growing up, and my grandfather was running it, and I'm just going to put this little plug in for him. He came from Germany as a 16-year-old and worked on a farm to kind of pay back his wages to come over, and then bought his own farm. And he did a lot of regenerative, which is a hot word right now. We're really getting back to the regenerative and talking about healthy soils and et cetera. Well, of course, in the Midwest, they've got all that Mississippi Delta black dirt. That's amazing. Thanks. And so it was pretty easy to grow there. We had I think an 1.5 acres of actual market garden or gardens, which we canned, and that was the food for the winter. And then they grew seed corn, sweet corn, soybeans, for feed, and a lot of the stuff that grows back in the Midwest. When my uncle took it over, didn't go so well, kind of got into the whole higher yields, spraying, etc. By that time, I was gone and had moved to Wyoming. When I came to Wyoming, of course, we tried to garden. You can't just throw that seed in there, and it grows. There's lots of barriers, which kind of brings me back to where what I'm gonna talk about. As a teenager, I came here as a late teenager, graduated high school from Casper, spent some time in the oil field when I was married to my first husband. Then I got into hospitality, where I was doing a lot more with food businesses, restaurants, etc. So now I've got all that background. Again, it was really difficult to just grow a garden here, which was kind of sad. Well, about 10 years ago, or 11 maybe years ago, now I have a grown son who's in medical school, and he says, he was in sports and etc. And he goes, I need to be healthier. I need to find more nutrition in my food. And we started doing a lot of research about that. And really, all of these projects that I'm involved with are really kind of the brainchild of Dr. Miller. He's a doctor of osteopathic medicine now, but during his time in medical school, he just realized how much we weren't concentrating on last mile food, so to speak. We were getting our foods from thousands of miles away, trucked or stored in warehouses, and or other countries, etc., just to have it. For me, as a teenager, I remember huge, the strikes in California, in the fields where they went on strike, and we weren't getting any produce from California. At the same time as that, there was also a strike in the harbors, which meant I remember going to Albertsons down the street from my house, and there's no bananas anywhere. Obviously, we don't grow bananas in the United States, but I just saw how fragile our food system is in Wyoming. We're a landlocked state. For that matter, we're a double landlocked state because the states around us, many of them are landlocked. So how easy it is for our food system to break down. At that point, and this was probably about 12 years ago, we sat down and said, we've got to try and do something about our local food. What can we do? So we actually, the start of it all was we did a career class for some middle school kids. And at that time, we met Terry Kraft from Lloyd Kraft Farms out of Worland. She was part of this career day that we were all involved with. And we sat down and we were talking and we were saying, what can we do to help this food system? What can we do to bring food around? And she said, well, I grow a lot of fresh vegetables. I do my own little CSA, but I'd like to expand it. So that was really the beginning. So what we did was we went through and did a feasibility study. We actually got a grant to do Natrona County mainly. First of all, so we sent this study out. We sent it out to all kinds of people there. Basically what came back was, you have a lot of interested people who want to buy local and more close foods, but there were no growers of any significance. They just weren't there. And so we would, now don't get me wrong, there's lots of market gardeners and there was lots of people who were doing backyard gardens and would go to the farmer's market and take, 10 or 15 bunches of beets and 10 or 15 bunches of carrots. But there was nobody who could give me 50 pounds of anything at any given time. And that's really where we were trying to go, because we wanted to build this CSA model where we were delivering veggie bags. That was our first priority. So when we wrote our report, everyone who read it said, you need to do the whole state of Wyoming. And at this time, I can tell you today there's probably 6 feasibility studies, and you all may have gotten like 10 surveys because there's lots of them going on right now. But at this time there weren't. So, and this was back in 2017. We were asked to then go forward and do the whole state of Wyoming. Well, what that did was woke us up. Basically what we found was that there's this periphery of agriculture. The Sheridan area, the Bighorn Basin, Torrington, there's some in Fremont County. But the big population areas where the consumers are had nothing. There was not a lot. The western part of the state doesn't have a lot. It has, there's beef and that sort of thing. But we were looking mainly for vegetables, fruits, things that we could grow. So what came out of that was the 2 biggest barriers every farmer had was transportation. You know what Wyoming's like. We've got 500 miles minimum between state lines in each direction. You've got mountains, 3 or 4 of them to go over before you can get to them. And some, you might just be 100 miles away, but you gotta go over a mountain in order to get it, so you can't always get it in the winter and etc. And season extension, that was the next thing. We have, now, Natrona County, we're lucky if we can get 120 days because they have very late frost and very early frost, notoriously. And in Natrona County, of course, there's also 5 different types of soils. It's a lot of alkaline, a lot of bentonite, a lot of sand, a lot, there's just those kind of, and huge wind. So we found that Natrona County was really had a lot of barriers to overcome. Not that you can't do it, you just have to be prepared for that. So then what we did was we said, okay, we've got all these guys on the periphery and they're in very small rural areas with a smaller population, but the population is 250 miles away from where, they could sell it. If they want to grow and move forward and make more, sell more of their product, etc., they have to have more market to sell to. So that's kind of what our feasibility showed. And those, the two biggest, of course, barriers were transportation and marketing. Because most farmers too are more interested in doing what they're doing. They're growing, they're harvesting, they're watching their plants, they're trying to, battle pests, they're trying to, all of that stuff doesn't leave a lot of extra time for. Now some have the right type of family in place or the right type of structure in place, they can do that, but not all of my smaller farmers. And an interesting thing, my fruit and there's not one that I'm aware of, and if you know of one that I'm wrong on, but 90% of all of the fruit and vegetable growers in Wyoming are on 5 acres or less. So I did 160,000 pounds with a gentleman who did his grow on 2.5 acres. He did have some greenhouse and season extension, but he was growing on 2.5 acres. And imagine how many people we can feed if he just doubles his opportunity. But he has to have the market, and he doesn't have a lot of extra time. So those were the things. So out of that, the solution that was born, well, was me at like 55 years old. So, but what we found was, this is where we could help. So we could help by going to these farmers and saying two things. First of all, I'll buy your product wholesale from you and put in my veggie bags. Now, mind you, when I started my veggie bag proposition, it was 10 bags or 10 boxes. It's now, I'm at 110 every time I deliver, every other week. In the summertime, I'm at 90 a week, roughly. So, it's taken some time, but now the program has come up. We've gotten a lot more interest. I have to say that when COVID hit and we created our Eat Wyoming site out of that, that was huge because people were doing a lot of online sales at that time. But the point is that we needed to, we started out, and I'm going to go kind of through just the veggie box, what it is first real quickly, and then I'll get into more of the crux of my job, and what's probably most interesting to you is how I can help you in the wholesale markets or how I can help. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background about how it all got started. And I can't say anything without giving Lloyd and Terry Kraft some credit because they were my very first farm. And they provided almost everything I needed at that particular time. So I drove to Worland every week in the summer or every other week in the winter and got as much from them as I possibly could to create a CSA for all my people in the Casper area, because that's where we started. I now deliver the entire state. And I have veggie box people all over. In fact, I deliver to Sheridan, and I'm in the Sheridan every other week on Thursdays. So I do come up here pretty regularly. Obviously, you've met me. We do what's called a Veggie Box Buyers Club. It's on my Eat Wyoming site. It has a ton of variety. We really do try to, I spend all day on Thursday and Friday calling all my people to see what's available. I call all my farmers, or they email me, but I'm kind of old school, so I love that personal connection, so I visit with them. Hey, what's your weather doing like up there? What kind of crops are failing, what are not, what's doing well, where are you, what do you have, what will you be harvesting on Monday that I can pick up on Tuesday, that sort of thing. I spend a lot of time visiting with all of my producers. In fact, I just got off probably this last week going over again what they're planting, what people are asking me for. So I call and I talk to them in January, in February, and in March about what their plans are. How much do you think you'll have? Who do you, what kind of, what will you have extra? Are there opportunities for me to pick up any extra? Are there opportunities for me to sell something wholesale? And so those are all things that I do at the top for producers. For consumers then, I do a lot of things like this. I make presentations, I do booths at different events. you know, trying to gain more direct consumers on that. So I do a lot of that sort of thing. And for a long time, for several years, it was all me. I did the driving, I did the calling, I did the delivery, I did all of it. For up until 2 years ago, I probably did all of it. And then, you know, things have really kicked up. So now, then I hired drivers, and now I have drivers who drive for me, and I have 4 or 5 of those. And now I have a warehouse person and an accounts manager, and so we're growing in that respect in helping with job creation, and I'm hoping to do more of that. As I get into the next part, I'll tell you a little more about that. Basically, quickly, you sign up for the veggie box. I let you know what day I'm coming. So for example, Sheridan folks, I gather all my goods on Tuesday. I build my boxes Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. I deliver, I have a pickup location in Casper on Wednesday night. I deliver to Lander and Riverton on Wednesday. On Thursday, I deliver to Sheridan, Gillette, and Buffalo, that area, Newcastle occasionally. Then I deliver to the Cheyenne, Laramie, and the southern part of the state on Fridays. And we just hired a driver. We've hired some drivers in Lander that we're going to expand that to the western part of the state. But I'll tell you about that a little more when I talk about regions. And then basically the shares are, you know, it's seasonal. Whatever's ready in the garden at that time, we gather that, I'll put them in the boxes. Oops, I do want to go back here though. I wanted to show you that these are just some of the partners that we have done. Of course, the crafts, we do, we transport for GF Harvest, we transport for bovine and swine. I do a farmer's market in Casper. I don't travel the state and do farmer's markets because I just hadn't had enough people or help or whatever to do them in more locations. Might be something that we do going forward. But when I talk about the farmer's markets here a little bit, I'm kind of a messy, it's all over, it's really beautiful, and I'm a loud barker. So people know what to do with all those vegetables. I'm not going to go through all of this, but if you have any questions about how exactly, you know, we do with the veggie boxes, I'll certainly go over that. I do like to let everybody know you are not, like, it's not that you are in there and then you can't ever get out. If you're going on vacation, you just have to call me, or we put it on a hiatus. You can drop off for the winter and go to, I have like 6 people who drop off and go to Arizona in the winter. Summertime, they come back on and pick up. So there's lots of opportunities. We also try very hard to do other things that you're not necessarily always familiar with in our boxes, because of one of our things is really to introduce people to new vegetables. Kohlrabi. I can't tell you how many times I get a text picture with a kohlrabi in their hand. What is this kind of thing? Or what's the other one? I do Romanesque if I can get it. That's always a fun one because it's got lots of Fibonacci sequence and it's really a beautiful vegetable. But what we also do then is tell them what to do with it. So we give them recipes. I talk about that all the time. I never not hand a box to somebody without saying, oh my gosh, we've got kohlrabi in here. And I'm telling you, it's my favorite thing to just peel and eat like an apple, but it goes great in coleslaw and etc. So those are all things that we work really hard to incorporate. And all the people who work with me have the, you know, it's part of their training is that if you're going to talk to people about it, you got to tell them what to do with it. Because what I found with a lot of the folks in the food security portion of it, they just don't know what to do with fresh vegetables. They don't know how to cook them. They don't know how to store them. They don't know that they can just throw them in the oven and roast them, and they have a whole different flavor than if you steam them. So those are all part of the education that we really work hard on doing. And so we do it in our newsletter. We've got an Eat Wyoming YouTube channel that we've created, and now in fact, that's part of our summer thing, is that we're going to go out and do more producers' profiles and more recipes so that we can create a more robust YouTube channel that's on our, and then I've got information, this same information on the table if you're interested in a veggie box, or if you're interested in helping me to supply the veggie boxes, that would be great. So now into the next steps. This was great. We did this for several years, but when we were in the process in 2019, 2020, it was in our strategic plan that we needed to move forward. Because there's a statistic out there right now that the amount of produce that can be produced and the amount that's like sold at farmers markets or to your friends and neighbors or internet, is a very small percentage. You can increase if you can increase to more wholesale markets. So that's really what we wanted to do. Not only because we're already doing the veggie boxes, but how do I make my travel to these places more efficient? Because just to give you just step back 1 second, my company, or the company, Fresh Foods Wyoming Distribution, L3C. It's a limited liability, low profit with a social mission. It's a tax structure that's not very well known. If any of you are familiar with Vertical Harvest in Jackson, the greenhouse that's on the side of the parking structure, they're an L3C company. And they're an L3C company because their social mission is to provide a safe and secure working environment for folks with special needs. How the IRS looks at it, basically, for this tax structure is that while you're a business, doing business, so you're a limited liability, low profit company, you have a social mission. And your social mission is your focus as opposed to, high profit driven. And as anybody in farming knows, it's not always that you're going to become a wealthy millionaire farming fruits and vegetables. It's just not, it's not huge markets and et cetera, not huge profit margins. But for us, our mission for Eat Wyoming was really more focused on you, the producers. It was, our mission literally states that we're out there to help our farmers become sustainable by connecting them with consumers. So we're going to do both. We really want to do, so what I'm doing, and my official title as local food broker, is when I'm calling Whole Foods Market, for example, and I'm saying, I really need this price. I need you to okay this price for us because that's what they need in order to be sustainable. And when I talk to food insecurity places like the food bank and some of these places when they're talking, everybody, donate, donate, donate. I said, I can't have them donate everything. We can donate things that might go to waste. I get that part. But we really have to sustain our farmers so that they're not in the same lines as everyone else. That's my kind of, conversation to them. But the point is that my mission is to make my first priority is to make my farmers sustainable. How do we help you grow? How do we, find other markets for you? How do we think out of the box? All of that sort. How do we market for you, etc. And then it's to obviously get it to the consumers so that they're able to have it. So that's kind of my mission as far as this is concerned. Is I'm going to pay for what I pick up from you. And we're going to try and come up with a good price, etc. So that was really where we felt we had to go next. I will tell you that in 2020, when COVID hit, online marketing, online ordering became a huge thing. We built the Eat Wyoming website from that because we didn't want to miss out on that. We are also so far out that, like, someone in rural, who just ordered something from me, they have KC, which is not far from any big thing, but they don't get a lot. But she said, hey, if you can drop off here, and it's right on my way in my route to Buffalo and Sheridan, so it was a perfect fit for me to start dropping off stuff. Well, then I started calling some of the restaurants, hey, would you be interested in lettuces? Lettuces are something I can get all year round. Obviously, you know that from Papa Joe's. I didn't see either of them here, but I work with them a lot. But you know that those people who are using that, can get it all year round. So those were some things that really came forward. And with that being said, then we were able to move forward, not just with the veggie boxes, which grew exponentially, but now I'm able to do a lot more on the wholesale level or distribution level. So a lot of what I do is I call this is actually what we need. Obviously, we need food businesses, producers and consumers. We need cold chain transportation, regional processing, and storage. I'm in the process that we have already gotten, we kind of tagged on with the Wyoming Business Council with their regions, and several other groups were doing a lot of things regionally, so are we. We created 7 basically regions, because we Fremont County's with the Wind River Reservation is kind of its own little thing. But I come to the Sheridan, Gillette, Buffalo area pretty regularly, the central area, of course, Cheyenne, Laramie is the southeast. This area, of course, with Rock Springs, that's my hardest one right now. It's my hardest one. It's literally 8 hours just to get there with no deliveries. And that's just to Rock Springs. And then if we want to try Evanston and up that Star Valley. So that one is my huge focus for 2024 is how do I get stuff from all over the rest of the state, which is pretty easy for me to deal with, to that part of the state. So with that being said, then our plan is that in each of these regions that we'll create another spot, which will be a pickup and drop off location where we can build cold storage and storage, and then my farmers and producers can drop off there. I can bring my stuff from here. We'll hire a person in each of those regions. If I had my big dream, I'd have a refrigerated vehicle in each one of those regions, a driver in each one of those regions, and a warehouse person in each one of those regions that would then coordinate with me and all of the stuff that we're doing, and we'd be able to, handle the whole state. Now, with that being said, working very diligently with lots of people on the possibilities of this. So there's not always the opportunity to get private investment for some of this. We have, I'm going to say it, we have gotten some USDA grants that are focusing on this, especially in rural areas like this. And we often don't take advantage of them, and we're trying to work with that so that we can at least get a start. Because once we get things rolling, it'll be easier to get, it to pay for itself. And as long as I can break even, I'm always happy. So our real purpose is that we're going to create these 7 regions, create a hub in each one of them. I call it a hub. We had, when we did our study, it did kind of show that the traditional hub spoke model didn't work. We have to have outside hubs moving into a central location that then moves it back out, kind of thing. So, but you can see the transportation. It's obviously, I used to be in the hotel business, and I would go to these tour groups and sell for them. And I would tell them that Casper is central, and it's on the way to everywhere. It was 280 miles to Mount Rushmore. It was 280 miles to Cody. It was 280 miles to Denver. It was 280 miles, well, a little more than that, to Salt Lake. Just a few more. But really, that was our central area. So now what we're hoping to do is create that and connect each of these regions, and because it's huge, vast area to cross in any given. For me to go from Casper to Jackson, which we do a Jackson run every Wednesday, is 10 hours without any stops. So I hired a driver in Lander. We go to Lander, we meet him, we give him all the stuff, then he moves on and he does the Jackson route. So none of my drivers are on the road, trying to at least keep safe. The other thing that probably I should have explained when I showed the others, I have refrigerated vehicles. I have a refrigerated box truck, refrigerated van. We have a refrigerated vehicle in Lander. It's important to keep that cold chain, that supply chain good. So while I'm not, I personally am a licensed distributor. I am licensed through the Department of Ag. My farmers are not necessarily, but I always want to make sure that my products hold the highest freshness, they're kept at the right temperatures. So we're very diligent about all our coolers. We maintain all of that sort of thing. So the cold chain never breaks necessarily. We pick it up, it's cooled, it stays in the cooler, it gets put into a cooler when we get wherever we're going until it's actually delivered to our customers. And with, oops, I guess I got it. Maybe. Well, there we go. Basically, of course, I have lots of pretty pictures for everyone because pictures always do great. I transport products for Lakeview Gardens out of Pavilion. They do microgreens. I transport meat for Tyler McCann, who has Wyoming Cowboy Cuts. I often pick up he takes the live animals. Then he calls me and says, hey, my meat's ready, can you bring it? Then I usually am there where his processor is, Wyoming Heritage here, I come pick it up, and then I get it back to Lander to him. I have the cold storage in my warehouse to hold it until I get back to him. So these are some of the photos that we did for them as part of, I wanted to show you this guy though. This guy, this is the guy, he does a bio-intensive type of farming. And this is the guy who I got 160,000 pounds this year from on 2.5 acres. So I just wanted to bring that up, that you can grow a lot of fruits and vegetables on a small amount. I'd love to, I'm working with him right now on hopefully being able to expand. I think he just got the opportunity to build another building, and we're working on some cold storage for him so he can take his vegetables immediately out of the harvest and then get them into a cold. A lot of the products that I get from Shoshone River Farms in Cody go directly to Whole Foods. So I have a contract, there's only one Whole Foods here, and they're very strict. And if you can get your farmers approved through Whole Foods, it's a huge deal. It took me a year. I am a licensed distributor with them. I can bring them all kinds of raw vegetables. Peppers is the biggest thing. They buy a ton of peppers from me. Cucumber, squash, watermelons, that sort of thing. Those are all things that, but he was one of my first that I got approved, and we sell to Whole Foods. And then Lamb Guys, another opportunity for them. They're out of Douglas. You may know them, Brad and Frank Moore and Brad Boner. Well, I distribute to White Mountain Golf Course in Rock Springs quite regularly to take their lambs. So what I'm saying is basically now we're moving into the wholesale. Also, we sell to restaurants. Heirloom and Native is a catering company that only uses Wyoming sourced products as much as she can. We always have to give that caveat there. But she does a catering event. She calls me up. She asks me what we can get. We deliver to her tons of stuff that she does in her catering. She's done 450-person weddings. Almost the entire meal at that wedding was sourced from Wyoming. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I'm showing you all of the different types of possibilities there are. If any of you are familiar with Heart Mountain vinegars, I know that she's got them in the Crossy Dairy Store here. She does the drinking vinegars. We highlighted Backwards Distillery is a local distillery in Casper, and we took some of these drinking vinegars and they made cocktails out of them, and they did a huge testimonial for us about how They can get, she buys raspberries from me when she wants to do, when in the fall, and she does a raspberry drink, that sort of thing. So basically, two things have happened. Obviously, we do total wholesale, call restaurants. I have several people that I distribute to in the Jackson area. It's a good market for sales for me. I do deliver to Slow Foods in the Tetons quite regularly. But now I'm working really hard to create other things. I've gotten a call from the TA Ranch, U-Cross Foundation, where I can now start connecting. What are you looking for? Then I can call, okay, here's where it is close. Here's what's in your neighborhood. Here's what, and how can we connect the two of you? I brought this slide up because I just finished, this was an example of money that was ready for the school districts. Is there anybody here that works at the school? You guys are really kind of forward thinking in that whole school district thing, because the school districts in this area, I know, do a lot of local procurement. So you're kind of way up, you're above the, you're already doing it. But there was a grant opportunity for them to get money, for the school districts to try. So there's a little known thing in the state legislative body that says that if school districts want to buy from a local person, as long as it's within like 5% price-wise, they can choose local foods. They don't have to necessarily go with what they get from the big purveyors. So we tested this out this last year, and we just bought $183,000 worth of local products from local Wyoming producers and distributed them to the school districts. The calls I'm getting now, my kids love that lettuce. My kids loved the mushrooms. Those were from Shoshone. They loved the creminis. They loved the butternut squash you got. It was amazing. How can we get more of that? So now that's the next project, and a couple things that are next in our working with them is working with producers and coming up with forward contracting is kind of a word that if I will buy it from you, if you will grow it, knowing that we never know and we're going to have a year where it's total disaster or whatever, that all those things are taken into consideration. But that's a huge area. We do, if any of you were at the Wyoming Food Coalition annual conference, we did a buyer or a producer training specifically with schools in mind, how you sell to school districts. I'm looking with Andrea to put more of those on, because there's certain things that they always use, there's certain things that they can't use, that sort of thing. But it's a really good opportunity to show people how you can actually grow to sell to them. And then the Food Bank of Wyoming is also just in the process. They just got, because that is one thing that the USDA is really trying hard to work on, is pushing a little more local. I have to say that I've seen more opportunities come up. And taking some of those opportunities then shows them, it kind of does a couple things. Some of the other barriers that I didn't mention were price sensitivity. Oh, I can't buy from a local person because it's way too expensive, or it's way too more. Well, here's what I tell my schools. So how much did you spend on this lettuce that you bought from a large purveyor? Okay, how long did it last? 2 days. Okay, here's the same product from my producer who picked it at the perfect ripeness. How long did that last in your refrigerator? Well, that one actually lasted me 2 weeks. So you threw away this much, and if you figure that into the cost, look where you are. You're really not that far off. It looks like you're getting a lot less. And I always tell the story with beef producers. Monty Gilbreth, who is with Commerce County School District, he's actually gotten Commerce County back to scratch cooking, and they're doing a lot more of that in their schools as opposed to box cooking. He got some Wyoming beef, and it was produced and I will tell you, you have to have it, your beef produced through a USDA facility in order to get into the school districts. But he got beef, he took 100 pounds of beef from Wyoming. He took 100 pounds of commodity beef he got from his purveyor. He fried them up. There was 10 and a half 5-gallon buckets full of water and grease in this 100 pounds. There was a half of 1 5-gallon bucket in this 100 pounds. So, and he and I kind of did this at a couple of school district meetings, but the point is that, okay, look how much more beef you're actually getting. So this might be $1 less or $2 less, but by the end, you're really not, you're losing that. So the price is not really what the issue is. And not only that, but this beef tasted 100 times better. And the kids loved it. In fact, he said that, one of the things that he said was that my lunch goes up when I'm gonna do Wyoming beef. When I advertise that I'm doing anything that's locally grown, my lunch numbers go up. They all pay on those days, so they don't have a lot of debt. He said it's amazing how much more the kids enjoying it. And there's lots of that. They're just having, they're loving the fresh and the local and the things that are more for us. Of course, and so I'm working now with bigger institutions in order to create some of these wholesale opportunities. The marketing, I guess, I will tell you a little bit about my farmers market. So that's another, and everybody can do their farmers markets. I am a little different, and I am always set right next to the guy who comes up from Colorado and the guy who comes up from Utah. The guy from Utah kind of gets his stuff from a distribution center. I will tell you the guy from Colorado is from Colorado Producers, so it looks good, but they have them in the little baskets and and they're set up. Mine is big piles. I just take my box of beets and dump it over, and the beautiful greens are spilling out, the carrots with their carrot tops, then the squash, and they're in these big piles. And when I'm talking to people about it, I'm telling them all the time what they can do. Don't throw away those beet greens, because you add a little bacon, you add a little onion, a scallion, you do this, put a little balsamic vinegar in there, you've got an excellent wilted salad with beet greens. Or take the carrot top and add walnuts, garlic, olive oil, and make a pesto out of it. Throw that in your pasta next time. Oh, I never thought of that, but that's which drives the people who help me, because I'm always talking and it holds up the line a lot. But my booth always has long lines, so much so that we had to open up my store, which we kind of, just out of necessity, opened up my warehouse. We turned it into a little store. So now I have a store where I carry lots of things, I buy lots of the products for my producers, and I have it up front. But we opened that up on Friday afternoons so that people didn't have to stand in line, because that was the complaint. Well, I can't come to your booth because your line's too long and I don't want to wait. And I said, well, come on Friday and you don't have to wait. And so there's always an answer to that. They can't get by without buying. But I do gather vegetables from all over Wyoming and create that. And people know that. And my vegetables always look beautiful. And my presentation is good. And I tell them what to do with it. So those are the two big things that, and now I wanted to just kind of, I probably talked a little longer than I was going to as I was watching the clock. But now I really want to just answer questions. And that creates conversation and move it on from there. That's my contact information. And I have cards over there, and I have flyers, and please take the little magnets for your refrigerator. Take 10, because I have thousands of them. And I have to tell you, my warehouse girl said, if I trip over this box one more time.
I have a question.
Sure.
Tell me about organic.
Okay, so lots of buzz about organic.
Yeah.
Almost none of I can tell you none of my producers are certified organic. What they are is sustainable, regenerative, and they're growing mindfully, so to speak. They're not using harsh chemicals, they're not using herbicides, they're not using pesticides. They're doing them more natural. Now, everyone knows if you have an apple orchard, sometimes you cannot get by without doing something. You know, there's always that. Or if you've got, but 90% of my, in fact, it's a future topic for us. We're going to do, the Wyoming Food Coalition is going to do a big thing on regenerative soil, and I think that's going to be the topic of our next big thing is all going to be about regenerative soil. There's lots of things you can do that do it naturally. Sarah Wood, who's in Ralston, I'm sure all of you have had her flower. She does, sometimes you lose a crop. You know, she had a crop that she had mold on it. It was a really wet spring. The thing didn't work. She took it out. She rotates her crops all the time. She does not spray, but she has the most amazing flower, stone ground, right there on her farm ever. And she does all regenerative style farming. So organic was a hot word, and when people ask me if this is organic, I say really truly there's all those, how do you know that wind drift didn't blow something somebody sprayed over here? Or you see the planes, flying over, how do you know that drift didn't connect here? There's, it's pretty difficult to do that. And I will tell you that trying to get organically certified, I did a lot of research on that. It's nearly impossible. It's almost like a value-added grant that they put out, 65 pages. They make it so laborious. And I actually had that conversation on a coffee conversation meeting I was in recently. But just, people can't hardly find help to harvest. Some of my producers in the Bighorn Basin were saying that they're having a hard time finding labor. They just can't find help. They can't do it all themselves. They can't find help. How do you think they're going to spend an entire, and believe me, doing organic, getting certified organic is practically a full-time job for somebody with just the paperwork. Just the bookkeeping that you have to keep. So there aren't any that and I could be wrong, because I might not have met them yet, but the certified organic thing there's not a lot of them. But I do ask that question when I go to my producers, how are you growing? What kind of methods do you use? Are you using chemicals? Are you not? And I will tell you that 99% of my people are not are growing naturally and regeneratively.
So,
I don't know if that answered your question or not, but yeah.
I was just, the guy that you said, is doing all biodynamic or whatever.
Biodiversity,
Or
biointensive gardening is what he
So is
does.
he doing like IMOs and stuff like that, or do you know?
I'm not sure. He has a lot of cover and plants. I'll ask him the next time I'm in there. I don't believe so, but it's all really, he literally has a great garden going there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. He's never mentioned it, but I'll ask him. Just
Okay.
now I'm curious and
Yeah, you know what IMO
Yeah,
is,
yeah. So, he's been providing me with lots of vegetables for the last several years.
If a person was interested in being a producer, what is your biggest market gap and what time of the year would it be and how much could you handle?
Well, winter is always my biggest, for fruits and vegetables. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
And I will tell you, lots of people are growing lettuce in greenhouses and stuff. Lettuce, I will tell you what I get asked most for in the winter is tomatoes. Tomatoes are tough because tomatoes need 12 hours of light to really work well. But there was a gentleman in Big Piney who had a really good tomato, in a greenhouse, of course, in a greenhouse setting, had a really good business going, and then he kind of blew it, and now he's not doing it anymore. But the possibilities are there. You just have to kind of help them along a little bit. And I will tell you, in another total project I'm in, I built greenhouses at elementary schools so we can teach kids where their food comes from. And each one of those greenhouses is growing tomatoes all year round. They take a little longer, so they have to have more plants, but tomatoes is the #1 thing. Why can't you get tomatoes from Wyoming in the winter.
And,
How long have you lived here? No.
How much could you potentially take then?
With tomatoes? Well, in considering some of the wholesale people I have, hundreds of pounds a week, probably. I could take, we just haven't had it, all the tomatoes are coming out of somewhere else, and usually not close. And so that's, and that's part of why they don't taste as good, because it's what we call that last mile transportation. If I pick it up from you, you've picked it, it's right, and I take it within, I think the longest any of my people have ever gone is 72 hours. They get it in 72 hours. That fresh peak, that stuff is still there. Not months while they were picked green and then ripened in a warehouse and that sort of thing, so that's the difference. So tomatoes is always my number one. And then I know people, this will surprise you, but squash, zucchinis, yellow squash, they like those. And they're sick of them by the end of summer, but Ben, I'm telling you right now, can you get squash? Well, not quite yet, soon. The other things that I always can use are broccolinis, cauliflowers, that sort of thing. Of course, cauliflower is a cold weather plant, broccolini is a cold weather plant, so those are things that we could do. Cucumbers, kind of the basics. You could always use radishes.
Can a lot of these be grown in the greenhouses then, like you're talking about tomatoes? What plants don't really lend themselves too well to greenhouse growing?
Well, it depends on how you're growing them. If you're growing them in a greenhouse and in dirt, some of these plants will do better. Hydroponically, they don't. Now, and I think the gentleman in Big Piney was actually growing hydroponically his tomatoes. I haven't had a chance to go see the greenhouse. I just learned about it, the one in Pinedale, which is now touting that they're growing different vegetables in it. And so it's on my hit list to, if it would just not snow on the day I plan to go, would be great. But, so I'm gonna check out and see how they're doing it. But I can tell you that I don't think that there'd be a shortage of opportunities if we start extending our seasons and grow into the winter. I mean, I know we have lots and stuff, during that summer peak time, but really if we can extend it and start growing more in the winter, and at least the basics, I think celery is another one. I get asked for celery a lot. And celery is it takes a long time for celery. You can do some things to help speed that along, like instead of pulling it up and leaving the root ball on it for harvest and just cut it off, then it takes a lot less time for it to grow back. So that's another kind of a little hack that you could do to make celery go quicker, but it's a longer time.
Since you've started your business, have you seen more people deciding to become producers for you and wholesalers? Or has the market already been out there of producers and you've been helping them along?
I think that both, actually. I've seen more producers. We have some new younger people moving in, doing some things, and then they're thinking, how can I expand my businesses? But there's some people who are growing small gardens, and now with the opportunity, I have a young man actually in Torrington who basically was just doing a small amount. He was doing his farmer's market in Torrington. I happened to run across his name and I called him and I said, hey, do you have any extra produce that you need to get rid of? I know how it is right now. And he said, yeah. And I said, I'll take all you have because I have a place I need to take it to.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's actually gonna grow specifically for me. So he's added another, I think he was growing on a 1/4 acre and he had access to 1.5 acres and now he's gonna grow completely. So there's that story. Then there's the one, then there's also some that are people who have been producing for a long time who are starting to get older. They don't have kids who are taking over their farm or ranch, and they're cutting back. So it's kind of an ebb and flow, and Mainly, some of those might have been out there and I'm just learning about them, so I'm reaching out to them. But there's no cap on producers. We just need, to find who's doing what, and if we can get them to do some diversity a little bit, some of the other things that we could use, that would be great.
Can you touch on just a little bit on how these producers are creating a magic soil out of the Wyoming landscape? There's some Minnesotans here in this room, and so we know
Lot
about
of
the black
composting.
soil there, so just really curious.
Well, it's interesting, because a lot of the people who are they're amending the soil with as much as they can, and then they switch, they do cover crops for one thing, which returns the nitrogen, or they'll do another, and they rotate. So I have a producer down in Torrington who grows I think he has a 700-foot long garden, and he does 50 feet, so each 50 feet is a different crop. And then the next year, it moves up. Which I thought was really an interesting type of, and my dimensions might be off, but basically that's what he did. So, it might have been carrots and I know I'm gonna get my companions wrong here. Okay, corn, beans, and squash. But then he moved those the next time. So they were moving each time, and that helps, return whatever the soil might be depleted. It didn't deplete it entirely of the, so he changed his crops every year. That's one way. Obviously, adding more compost. A lot of my people are no-till. So all the stuff that's left gets kind of crunched up and then put in there, and then they'll put new dirt on top of it. That's how we do it at this project that I'm talking about, where I did the greenhouses at elementary schools. We have kind of a no-till thing. We crumble everything up, we put it down, and then we bring in compost and put on top at the fall, and then that all works out, and then we don't have to. And so our thing has always been kind of to just use what we can and replenish and create organic matter. We are working on creating, if we could create more compost building facilities, so to speak, around the state would be amazing. There are a few around, but like in Casper, for example, it takes a while. It took me 5 years to get it. And I even had another thing, in my yard specifically, I had to do all container gardens, because we have black walnut trees in our yards. And black walnut trees won't allow, they exude jugular loam, can't grow under them. I tried, even the ones that were friendly with it, doesn't work. So we went to all container gardening in our yard, which works great. I do container gardening, so my store is on a very busy street on CY in Casper, and I just got a bunch of those old, got a farmer who gave me his mineral salt tubs, filled them up with compost that I did get from, our landfill has a great compost project going on. And when you buy compost from them, it's been cooking, so to speak, for over a year. So it's been in there, it's chipped and mulched and all of that sort of thing. And I've had really good luck with it. So I filled those up, and I had 15 containers sitting out in front of my, growing all kinds of vegetables on a very, very busy street in Casper, so.
I'm going to interrupt for just a minute. First of all, I want to thank LeAnn. I think if we really want to solve all the local food problems in Wyoming, we just need to clone her. That was really, really so informative, and you were so ambitious. Really want to appreciate taking time out to come and talk to us about that. So first, if we could give her LeAnn told me that she's got some time for a little after conversation, so I don't want you to have to feel like you have to rush off. We've got this room for, until 2 o'clock, so if you have more questions, fine. We would love for you to sample some of the food that comes from our local food producers. It's all from the Food Freedom Store downtown, and, yeah, you know, the source is here, so
Well,
please take advantage of that.
I told somebody the other day, they made a comment, because I'm in a lot of groups. I'm on the Food Coalition, I'm part of the Farm to School Task Force, I'm part of the Tri-State Local Food Group. I'm in there, and I said, I only do that, I'm annoying enough because I want to know what's going on everywhere. So, anyway, I thought I saw a question over here. Did I miss somebody? If I did, feel free to come up and we'll talk more.
Do you contract with your producers, or is it kind of whatever they're growing?
Handshake.
It's kind of a handshake thing. I haven't, but it's not out of the realm to do so. Because that is something that we're working really hard to bring forward in Wyoming and it's called forward contracting. So getting producers and buyers in the same room. For example, the school district. And I have to add, I'm going to caveat just a minute. I had somebody call me the other day, they're a producer, and they said they were having a horrible time doing the bids for the school district. They'd sent out a bid. They had a horrible time doing bids for them. And I said, I find that hard to believe because I actually have been delivering this product to the schools for months. So now we're going to work on how we can make that transition from that producer to, and I don't know if it's because I'm a licensed distributor, that might be the caveat, I don't know if that's really what it is, but I just got this question yesterday, so I'm going to start delving into it and find out how we can make it easier for our producers, because that's part of my mission is to find these markets for producers and get them into these wholesale markets. So, but forward contracting is basically that you have this entity, a hospital per se, and you're growing lettuce, and they are going to say, if you will grow 100 pounds a week for me, or whatever whatever it is, I will sign a contract with you, and then I will promise to buy it. And that's what those contracts look like. With the crafts, for example, CSA in the beginning, well, basically what CS means is community supported agriculture. And what it originally was intended is that you go to the farmer and you say, I want to be a part of your agriculture, and I'm going to give you money ahead for you to buy seed and get things planted, and then I'm going to come out and I'm going to work in the field, and then when it's harvest time, I reap my rewards. Well, in Wyoming, again, vast geographical area, can't run up to Worland every day or every other day to help in the field and etc. So we took that on. And in the very beginning, that's what we did, was we actually paid that farm money in advance and said, we promised to buy this much. Now it's, we've been doing it for 10 or 12 years with them, and now it's, I'm going to buy all the extra stuff you want to sell me, and it's kind of on a handshake. Would I be opposed to doing a contract with a producer? Not at all. And I've got a couple people who can give us some legalese in that contract, so we have resources for it if we needed it.
Well, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry, did someone?
Well, how many producers do you work with? I'm just curious.
So I work with about 40 producers on a regular basis. I have 65, then there's another 20 some that I see occasionally, but I have 105 producers registered on my website. Some of them are not active, and I'm, another one of my big things in the next couple of months now that I have helpers and stuff is actually reaching out to all of those producers and finding out, what's holding them up from being a part of Eat Wyoming. Why, do they not have pictures? Let me come take some. That was something I was going to tell you is that one of the things that we have been working with the Department of Ag on is highlighting more producers. And how can we get you content, market content. How can we get you pictures so that you can put them on your Facebook? And if we ever do, a highlight reel for you, or we come and film you, or we come to your place and do something that we give you access to all of that. It's always been in our purview to do that. Aside that we get to use them on our Eat Wyoming site and et cetera. But we're getting ready to work on another big push of producer profiles and highlights across the state. So this coming summer to help create more marketing content for people. So got too busy with delivering vegetables that I kind of let that marketing part go. Sorry.
In your spare time. I want to thank you all for coming. Really appreciate your being here. Before you leave, and LeAnn's going to be here, like I said, so if you have more questions, you want to just mingle and chat with her one-on-one, that's fine, with each other. There's still some food out there for you to take home.
Penny,
Yes.
really quick before we wrap up, when everyone walked in, you were entered into a raffle. Lana and Tom were very generous to donate these two lovely spaghetti squash on the table. I went ahead and just did the drawing. So our winners are Ian Cannon Wallace. Where's Ian? Ian, okay, and Rachel and Luke Borgalt.
And you can put those, I'll gratuitously market to you by putting that spaghetti squash in a bag.
And Tom, wave your hand so we know who donated this.
Oh, thank
You didn't know you were in a drawing. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for listening to my, go on and on. Hopefully it was all you were expecting. So if you have any questions, my cards are over there. Even if you don't do it today, take my card and please feel free to call me anytime. That number on there is my direct line and I have it with me all the time. So,